All right, we're back for the fourth session. How you going, all you guys? My Facebook friends out there, former friends, Upper Marion, Lane Community College, University of Oregon. All my other friends here in the community is Eugene, Springfield. And to my friends in Medford, Ashland, Talent, and many of my compadres around the globe, which I've made in the past 15 years. Just calling, I'm just saying this is the last of the interview, hopefully. Bill and Douglas are in Idaho. I just woke up, and hopefully we could finish this off. In the segment 3 of the tape, we see Bill wrote a question, and he has hopefully his other question here. Bill was basically, he's asked, okay, we talked about obstacles and my goals over the course of these of this interview, and Bill wanted to know, am I a person, what sort of things that I do to point to that I've accomplished? Because I'm making some pretty big claims. I'm making assertions that what I want to do. God, I can't see through these things. What I want to do in regards to helping veterans and other people. I'd like to see a population eventually having not to pay rent or mortgage. Anyways, to do this, he was concerned about, am I a person who can do things I set out to accomplish? And then once I think I demonstrated that I do, I have, then he wants to know, well, a lot of people who are like, don't have integrity have accomplished a lot of things and faced a lot of adversities, and that's true enough. So he wants to know if I have integrity, okay? So the last question he asked to pin me down about this, do I have integrity? So his last question, let's see. He said, Vince, that's quite a list of obstacles you've overcome. It can be argued that there's no shortage of unethical, ruthless people that have also overcome many obstacles. What could you present to the public in general that you're a man of ethical character, a man that can be trusted? And of course, I told him, hey, this is going to be taking up so much time, and asked if he was ready for it. And because, I was ready to go to bed. I just feeling wiped out. And he said he was up for it, He just wants, the question is, am I a man of integrity? All right. So the thing is, basically, what I've been telling Bill is that, from what I've told him, I've already established throughout the whole interview. I think the thing that we can establish is I dread a few things. I'm not superhuman. I'm not 100% fearless. I have certain fears and dreads, and a lot of things I have a strong aversion to. Homelessness is one of them. I've been homeless a couple times. I was homeless when I first got out of the Marines and nearly starved to death that winter. I was courting homelessness. I had to live in a basement for a while and was looking around at the fairgrounds, not the fairgrounds, the wooded areas around LCC, and think about posting my tent there. So I was courting homelessness then, but I actually didn't have to sleep outside. Then when I got a job, when I was kicked out of the post office, I was living in my truck. When I went back home to be with my mother, I was living in a car. I had no place for a while to live until my stepfather, I guess felt bad about it and put me up in his house. So, and then when I came back here, again, I had the weird distinction of owning properties, although they were diminishing as I was paying the lawyer and paying the fees and all these bills are cropping up. I had a weird distinction of being a man with assets who could not afford to live in his own house. At first, I went from living in my garage, renting out my house, and then I had to basically just live in my truck and look around the state for work. So I dread homelessness. I do, okay? And I dread starving because I've starved. It's not fun. I don't like being unemployed. I feel best when I'm working, Now, some people try to look at that as a virtue, and other people try to look at that as like some sort of weird thing. Like, look, you don't need the work. You're a workaholic, and you do that as like for some reason as if I'm defective because I don't feel right if I'm not working. I like working, So there's a lot of things. I don't like being unable to fend for myself. I dread that. You know, I know it's like to have an illness and barely make it to work. And right now I'm in a situation where my health is declining. I'd hate to be on the streets with my health being the way it is. I mean, it's bad enough having a house where you get a warm bed to sleep in. You know, I hate not being able to be there for my friends and family. You know, those are things I dread. Not having the power to make my way through the world, not be able to be service to my friends and family, and it's just terrible. And quite frankly, I think any sensible person would find that dreadful. But I have a special distaste for it because I've experienced it, and I experienced it pretty badly. Now, I've said this before, and so I don't need to really go on it. The reason why I've mentioned all this stuff is to go to the next step. Okay? So, again, I really enjoyed working at the post office. Unlike a lot of people, not only did I not like being unemployed, and not only did I like working at a job, I enjoyed working at the post office. The hours, the type of work, so a lot of the people at the time I was around, just really enjoyed it. It was my job. I didn't feel like I was somehow failed in life because I got a postal job instead of some professor job at a college intellectual. I was going to school every day. This job gave me the resources to do what I wanted to do. The easiest blue collar job I've ever worked. Like I said, 5 paid weeks vacation a year, 4 paid holidays, or rather 5 paid holidays, 4 paid sick leave, 10 days of paid holidays, the scheduled holidays. Civil service, a TSP, where they meet you dollar for dollar up to a certain amount. Nice little health care. I mean, as far as for what it buys, it's a decent as far as HMOs go, right? And again, I was warm and I'm dry, and it was just right up my alley. I could listen to books on tape. I just felt I was getting paid to get a college education. Kept exercising. You're up on your feet all day, on an average walking 12 miles a day in a 12-hour period, the 8 to 12-hour period, and moving boxes. So I kept, it really was good to keep the fat off, and it was good. It's fast-paced, and it was the nights weren't bad, you know. So again, the reason why I'm saying that is, on one hand, I really love my job, and I wanted to keep my job. On the other hand, on the opposite end of the scale, a strong aversion to hunger, starvation, homelessness, impotence, and so forth. And so I didn't find the job to be as distasteful as most of my coworkers seemed to think it was. A lot of the union officers think it was. And like I said, Bill, it's really weird. Life had other plans. Everything was going good. My job was going good. I had money to invest it. Everything was going good. And when I could wear the respirator, as much of a pain in the ass that is that it really was worth working there wearing a respirator. Just like people who work in a paint booth all day long. They may not like the respirator, but they do it because they do it for the money. They do it, because of the job, because it's worth it. They look at the risk and discomfort, and they weigh it, and they stay at it. So, as I said, unbeknownst to me, the dust particles and everything had us susceptible to ever-increasing lung infections. There's an increased frequency, increased duration of lung infections. And at first it was just me and a few other coworkers. 2 former coworkers who started getting really sick even before I did, died from lung infections. And they got chronic lung infections prior to me getting it. And quite frankly, they thought it was the post office, the air. And I didn't think anything. I mean, how could I know? I always felt fine at first. And then they got new machines and kept on getting new machines. Then I was the next guy who was sensitive. And then I didn't still think it was work because I didn't feel worse when I got to work. In some ways, I felt a little bit better because when I first get out of bed in the morning, I'm hacking and coughing. I got headaches, nausea, pain. And I would get moving around at work and I'd feel maybe a little bit better. I felt sick all the time. Now, if I felt great and gone to work and started getting sick every time I walked in the door, then I would have suspected something. But then we started suspecting something perhaps when you know, a lot of people had allergies, but, you know, because we live in a grass pollen area. But only a certain portion of the population have allergies. And out of 250 people, when 200 people started getting chronic lung infections and sinus infections, you know, after a while, then people started complaining and started suspecting it was the building. Now, a lot of people started crying out and saying, hey, you know, the Postal Service should get a high expense, you know, a multi-million-dollar air filtration system so we don't have to wear a mask. And to me, if you're getting lung infections, you should be wearing protection instead of waiting around for the post office or somebody to get you an air filtration system. To me, it was the craziest thing. People didn't want to wear a mask or anything because they thought, well, I'll just deal with this lung infection or sinus infection and not wear a mask. Now, I can understand that regular paper dust masks are uncomfortable and they didn't really help, quite frankly. In fact, you got breathing fatigue through them. But the thing is, the point is a lot of people would have probably, you know, I don't know, not wear one and just, I don't know what they would have done. So anyways, eventually their own hazmat person came down, their own industrial hygienist and a postal industrial hygienist, a postal industrial physician, and a hazmat expert came and talked to us about hazards in the mail and so forth and so on. And then they basically said, hey, what's, you know, you need to wear, for those who have a problem, need to wear a half-face double canister respirator for the type of particulates and the organic vapors and varnishes and so forth in the air. Because it was a new thing, right? And so that's what we did. That's what I did at first, and just for the heck of it, you know, just in case, because I was desperate. And I wore a respirator for a couple of weeks. I wore it 24/7. I slept with it, you know, and next thing I know, I only wore it at work. And, you know, my problem went away, and I was fine with that. And other people saw me, like, well for the first time in years. And then they started wearing it, and they were feeling great. The guy with MS, who first come back from his being out for a year on disability, he was getting reinfected again. It was exacerbating his MS, and so he wore it, and he started feeling better. And you know, this my friend Tom, who had cancer, a rare form of cancer, he was getting lung infections. He wore it, and he felt better. So a bunch of people felt better. They started wearing it. But then the unions, in my estimation, started stirring up trouble, and they said, look, you know, see what's happening. Those guys who are wearing it, you know, they're going to be, 20 years from now, going to be alive and healthy, and everybody else who's not wearing it is going to be dead and have all sorts of problems, and it's going to show all along that you guys have a problem here. And so those guys kind of freaked out, and because at first, they said they tried to target a couple of friends of mine that weren't liked, and then we got them to convince them to wear it, and they let us for a while. And then unions started stirring stuff up. And then they said no, and they got fearful. And then it just became a real mess. And so at first, because I was like really well liked, because I was the class clown and getting everybody to come over to my house and work out, and we were having fun. And it was a great time, Bill. We had a really good time, and I was really well liked. The one thing that I was so liked by management, the four supervisors, that a lot of the union officers and union people were resentful, the union officers specifically, because they didn't feel like I should be fraternizing with the supervisors. Well, a lot of the supervisors, they're just people. A lot of supervisors were clerks and mail handlers previous, and they wanted to do something more challenging, so they went into management. Now, if they were my friend a week before management, and all of a sudden they're management, I'm not going to resent them for being in management and treat them like shit. You know, somebody has to be in charge. Somebody has to be a manager. And so I go scuba diving and do other things with the manager. I wasn't getting any special perks. But anyways, so I was well liked, even by the plant manager and so forth. He didn't have any grudge against me at the time. And so, again, you know, the illness that came back, I thought eventually, because I had a mother that was having some problems, and she was having depression, and she was unhappy, and I think it had to do with her early onset Alzheimer's when I look back in hindsight. And a lot of people, when they go through marriages, have rough patches, and And so I was fearful because she was developing some cognitive problems and depression. And I thought, okay, I need to make sure that I keep my health and prepare a place for my mother, and maybe prepare and get wealthier in the event that I can't work. So I maybe might afford home care or something like that. And, you know, I wanted to kind of be there for my friends who were not doing well. And so I just started working harder and harder, and I was just still sick the whole time, and I just kind of worked through it. Okay? And I had all sorts of things. I had relationships, a couple different business relationships that I had to step up and keep stepping up, because if I lost my job, we could have gone bankrupt. And, you know, I met this woman that for the first time in my life, I reached a certain age where I wanted to have kids and a wife. And I felt I finally had the financial wherewithal to do it. So I didn't want to lose that, you know. I'm terrified of losing all that. And I just wanted to be there to keep that going. Does that make sense, Bill? He's writing something right now. Typing. Bill's saying, if you were having such problems because of your job environment, why did you not just seek employment elsewhere? Surely the benefits and the pay are not worth endangering your health and job. Still typing. Why didn't you quit and find another job? Okay. Well, Bill, that's a good question. You know, that's what a lot of people have asked me. Why don't you just quit? Now, again, we're talking about allergies, right? And my doctors told me, because of my situation, my allergies, which I did develop, they said that I would have this problem wherever I worked, wherever I lived. Eventually it would crop up. Now, you know, even though I was working towards college education, I was on the precipice of a lot of things. I was involved with the woman that I was thinking, you know, we're going to have kids, get married, have kids. I was in a precipice. I was in a couple different businesses where my business partners, and I relied on my certain amount of money that I was having coming in every month from the post office to kind of keep pushing into the business and the real estate. And there was the concern of my mother. So to just quit the job and seek employment elsewhere that likely would not pay half of what I was paying, and I'd still have this illness and still would have to ask another employer if I could wear a respirator or something, to me that just didn't make sense. And since what I was asking was essentially a legal right, and that these guys were breaking the law, I just assumed that the union, when everybody would just step up, make some noise, go to the legislators, get the newspapers involved, these guys would know that they're breaking the law, and then they would stop, and then I could keep my job. And then it became apparent that they weren't going to do that. And I would still realize, but I would have to go out and look for another job somewhere else, and I would lose my business. I would lose my ability to fend for my mother. I would lose my ability to be there for anybody. I mean, yeah, I'd find a job and be able to support myself, but I felt my mother had a very real need situation and needing a place to live. I didn't know at the time, because my stepfather had never been put to the test if he would take care of my mother. Luckily, he did. But I didn't want to take that chance and find out that he wasn't man enough to step up and take care of my mother. And like I said, and plus the whole situation of my friends who were at the mercy. I'd go somewhere else to get a job, and these guys, I'd leave them to fend for themselves. I felt we were all in this together, right? That was my feeling. So, I don't know how to explain this to you, you know? It's just one of those things is that I just thought it better to keep the job I had. One hand is worth two in the bush, you know what they say? And plus some doctors were worried that I had some sort of weird virus that was a suppressive immunovirus, not HIV or anything like that, but something that had been stripping my immune system, because they were pumping me through all these antibiotics and drugs, and my lung infections really never went away. I, walking pneumonia once. That's why I get scarring to this day from paper dust and walking pneumonia. So like I said, it was one of those things where it would just turn into a mess, and basically a couple of the supervisors just kept on pursuing it. They wouldn't let me work outside after a while, and they offered me initially. They offered me the ability. They said, "Look, we know you're the only one with the problem." That's what they were saying, and they offered me a jobs elsewhere, any shift, any this and that, if I would throw my friends underneath the bus. That was basically what it was. You got to, I had to quiet. They would give me any job I wanted, any shift I wanted, to a satellite office. They just wanted to make sure that I would just throw my friends under the bus and just leave them be. But like I said, Tom was a situation, my friend Tom, he had a rare type of cancer that was affecting his glands. In 7 years, he had five operations, remove cancerous growth, remove his glands, where he's taking hormone therapy and so forth. Now, Tom was a good guy, okay? And it wasn't like he had all this insurance. He had a pre-existing condition. They forced him out of the military. He didn't, like a lot of people, he didn't have a crap load of money. Him and his wife met in the military, got married, had 2 kids. And the thing is he's forced out of the military, has to look for work. So he got a job at the post office eventually, right? Now, he got life insurance through them, like a couple $100,000, like $200,000, something like that. There's a maximum that the post office gives, and it's a real good price, a real good monthly price. But when you got 2 kids in a family, and if you're to die and you can't get any more insurance, and you have no savings, no investments, what are you going to do? Most people will step up to work for their kids and just go through the agony and pain and do it. I mean, not a lot of people, but Tom did. And his own dream, he was a Christian guy, and he said, I just pray to God that God will allow me to live long enough to see my kids get out of high school, go to college, and I want to walk both of them down the aisle. I love my kids. I want to live that long. And in the meantime, I want to sock as much money away as I can to pay for the college and prepare for their life, and so my wife could be, taken care of. That was his dream. That's all he wanted. He was reconciled with the fact that he was going to die horribly from his cancer. He's going through all these operations. Now, he claimed that his doctor said that his cancer accelerated and progressed, and he felt that he wouldn't have gone through those 5 operations in 7 years if he could have kept his health and fight the infection. But that's not what they did, and they didn't care. The supervisors, some of them laughed at the suffering that Larry went through. They laughed at the suffering that I went through. Oh, look at Vince, Oh, yeah, he lifts weights and benches all that weight, and look at that, and he's still looking, he's not such a Superman. And they laughed when we told them that we would try to bring them up forward, and they just said, hey, the government will protect us. There's nothing you can do. We could do anything we want except rape you here on the floor or kill you. We could do whatever we want, and we'll be protected. And they were right. And that is wrong. So I didn't want to just leave and throw my friends under the bus. I didn't want to leave for my own sake. But even when I saw it out and they were going to pay me off, then what does that mean? Would I be a man of integrity if I said, yeah, I'll take a job, and just as long as I'm safe, and I'll keep quiet even though that I know you're screwing over other people and putting their health and their life at risk? That wouldn't be very much integrity, would it? How could anybody live with that? I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think, I think that should be apparent. And what really got me is that the creepiest thing was that the union basically just, they would laugh about, oh, look at this, our lungs or the air filtration systems, and they don't care. And in a weird way, the union and some other people seemed to take comfort in this sort of bullshit that was going on. And it was really strange. And I stayed the whole time trying to get everybody to just step up. That's all. DeFazio wants you to come down to the office. I go to the union. He wants you to come down. So my whole thing is I got caught up in trying to get people to stand up for themselves, because not only were the litigants involved and fighting for our health, you had a small percentage of people who've never smoked, who've never had allergies, weren't prone to bronchitis. All of a sudden, they're taking all sorts of inhalants and medications and stuff for their lung infections, and they're not saying anything. These 200 and some people, or whatever, 100 and some people signed a petition to get the air quality checked out by OSHA. And these are things that OSHA would be called in, but they would be alert the post office ahead of time when they were coming to check out the plant. That all of a sudden the managers leave all the double doors open around the plant, and then they wouldn't run. They would clean up everything, and they wouldn't run the machines for a couple of days. OSHA would come in and say it barely meets expectation, but barely is barely. So the whole thing is that eventually I had all my sick leave got used up, my vacation time got used up. I was on LWOP, I was taking family medical leave so I wouldn't get fired, but I'm off without pay. My money going, selling my properties just to live, money going to the lawyer. You know, when it rains, it pours. Some of my properties needed repairs. It's more money going out. But you know, we're talking about if I'm stand up and if I have integrity. You know, the bottom line is management and the Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department offered me several deals along the way when we were going through litigation. I remember a couple times he stopped and wanted to talk to my lawyer privately about offering me maybe a job at a different plant. I think he thought that I wanted to move to a different area where my ex-girlfriend had lived, the one who left me because she couldn't put up with the stress. And I wasn't angling for that at all. I just wanted to be left unfettered and left alone and you know, have them comply with the law. But they offered me several deals on the side, okay? And like I said, they used my attorney as a go-between, all right? And all I would have to do was simply throw my co-workers under the bus. Because quite frankly, my co-workers were beaten. They were ill. I mean, they had lung infections too, plus MS, plus cancer. The only thing I had to worry about was a walking pneumonia, and I simply had a raging lung infection. Now, so I can't imagine what they were going through, especially Tom with this cancer. And at the time, I had spooks and gooks following me. See this office here? I had people come into my house when I was at work and get a log onto my computer, which had been, you know, which I would unplug and turn off. They would log in. I have the hard drive and computer and storage hidden now that shows the registry at the times when I was at work punched in. People would be in my house and they'd be you know, and that's another story. That's a whole nother story. And you know, I quit eating food out of my refrigerator because all of a sudden the food's moved around and the milk, somebody was messing with my food. It would make me violently ill. I had people driving around following me. I'd see where there was a same face, whether it was here at a coffee shop in Eugene or in a coffee shop in Medford, or they're taking pictures of me at a rental, you know, and just following me around. People come out questioning me, being real creepy, right? And so people all of a sudden, out of nowhere, talking about paper dust and talking about how the government is corrupt and needs to be spanked and somebody should take them to task. All these weird people coming out talking about these coincidentally weird things that I was involved in. So anyways, Judge Hogan agreed that we were right when we went to trial, and then he said because of untimeliness, which I blame partly to the union, but quite frankly, technically we weren't really untimely, and that's a different story. But he said that they're doing wrong, and if they, after his judgment, if the next day they refused to let us wear a respirator, that we should go refile for a lawsuit. And I didn't think any of us would live long enough. In fact, Tom died shortly after from a lung infection. And my one union president, he got so freaked out, you know, because he had done nothing, quite frankly, except the minimal, in my opinion, a minimal required by law. And he goes running the ICU to hang out while Tom dies, you know. And quite frankly, Tom's wife was really pretty pissed off about the whole thing, felt that he was disingenuous. Anyways, one of the other co-litigants was forced out, and he had to get Social Security disability. It took over a year for him to get any funds or from the post office or from Social Security. Nearly lost his house. He had to like strip mine his retirement and get penalized for taking money out to pay his mortgage. You know. Another co-worker died. His name was Kleino Roper. He had gone to management. His doctor said, you need to wear a respirator. And he's got chronic lung infections, and Kleino was a workhorse. Kleino loved to work. He never took sick leave or anything. But all of a sudden, he's got people he's got to worry about. He's got family members who don't have health insurance and are expensive operations, and Kleino's paying for them. He's got responsibility, so he's trying to tough it out like a lot of men would. Now, maybe he shouldn't have because he had a lot of sick leave, but, you know, he was faced with the fear of like what I went through and other people went through where their sick leave was stripped out. All right? And I was there when he was asking, telling the one supervisor, Eric, he says, I need to wear a respirator. Here's the note from my doctor. And they said no. And Kleino, who was older than me at the time, he was the age I am now, right around there, had a strain on his heart. The lung infection put a strain on his heart. He died. And I remember writing a note to his son, who was a Eugene police officer. I don't know if he ever gave it, but I went down there to the office and gave a letter. I think, I'm not sure if it was certified or whatever, but I gave a letter to hand over to him. Said, you know, you may not know this, but your father died unnecessarily, in my opinion. Never heard from the guy, so I don't know. I could kind of understand that. And I managed to had the Postal Service I forced them to bring me back and allow me to wear a respirator. Not the double canister, but it was the next best thing. And the double canister was my next move. And after I forced them, because I had canvassed, as I told you all earlier, I canvassed the Senate and the House of Representatives. And they brought me back to an office downtown where the dust wasn't as bad, but they still had varnishes and stuff like that. And I was getting sick, and I just knew I would not live till retirement age. And so basically, I got some activists in the community together, and I called the media, and I said, I'm going to, next week, I'm going down, and I'm going to wear a double canister respirator, and they're going to tell me to take it off, and I'm going to refuse, and they're going to drag me off the jail. Postal inspectors and so forth will drag me off the jail. I know that's what's going to happen. So they were all happy. They were going to come. They had planned. They were all going to come and see that. And then I got to talking to Senator Wyden's liaison for the post office, and I told him because he got me really mad. He said, look, you know, the post office, this and that, here's excuses. They have some good excuses. I go, no, they're breaking the law, and this is what they're doing, and everything they're saying, all their excuses are fallacious, and I could explain why. And then I got pissed off and told him what I was going to do, and I told them that I had talked to legislators years, and I documented all my conversation begging them to get involved, because initially they said, no, we can't help until you go file a lawsuit. Then and that's one of the reasons why we filed. I never expected that the lawsuit would go through. I just thought that we would file and the legislators would get involved and so forth. I'd hoped. And that would be the end of it. But then they said, no, now that you file, we can't get involved. And so when I talked to him, I said, I'm going to be, you know, the heck with this. I'm going to get arrested. All you guys are going to try to paint me as a crank. And I got all sorts of like videos and documentation begging you guys for years to get involved. And that's when in a couple of days they said, please come back to the plant and you wear a respirator and we'll train you in this and that, which I had already been certified. Had my own paid money to get training to use all sorts of canister respirators and the positive flows. So, I mean, that's a lot of work. So you want to know if I have integrity, if I'm stepping up. Okay? So when I get back to work and they tell me to come back to the plant, you know, my lawyer, initially they tried to set me up with information which they could have arrested me on. They had all these safety information that I needed to catch up and read, and it was big piles of stuff. And the supervisor said, oh, just take this. You could take this home. You don't need to read it right now. You've been out. You need to relax. And so just take this home. And you're really smart. You don't really need to, you just, you know, just fill out the forms. And so I was supposed to take that stuff home that night. And I'm going through all these files, and all of a sudden I see paperwork that has the personal information of everybody at the plant. Their social security numbers, phone numbers, addresses, all their personal information that's illegal for anybody to have. And the only place to get that information is to go into their inner offices, to their locked file cabinets, and take that information. And they were trying to set me up. And so then basically I just got some witnesses. I look at this and that and so forth, and I confronted the supervisors, and they were, chagrined and so forth. They know they've been caught. And within a couple of weeks, my lawyer called me at work, and he said Postal Management from Washington, D.C. contacted him. Now, this is my lawyer who had dropped out. He was no longer involved, but they called him, and he felt like he needed to call me. And he said that they would allow me to wear the double canister respirator. They would allow me to work anywhere I wanted, any shift I wanted. And they would offer me 6 figures in recompense for the, my time off and so forth, and reestablish my sick leave or something. They were offering me a lot. They weren't offering me the number that I forget who put in the number of several $1 million or whatever, but they were offering me 6 figures. And after living in a truck and being homeless and losing my property and losing my health, and my fiance and my mother and everybody in my life and friends and business partners and so forth, I would lie to you if I said I wasn't tempted. I don't think too many people would blame me if I had not taken that money, or if I had taken that money. But they wanted me to keep quiet. They wanted me to never grieve it, to never file another lawsuit. I had to sign something contractually that would be a non-disclosure of the amount, the non-disclosure, total, no, I can't talk about it or anything. And I gotta say, I was under pressure. I was courting bankruptcy, and I was tempted. But then Tom died. I could never talk about that. I could never be there to maybe make sure that this didn't happen to someone else, or to another Tom, or Vince Faney, or Larry. Larry had been first forced out. Anthony finally got what he wanted, the African American guy, and he was the one who was targeted with racism. He got what he wanted. He got a job at some little facility as a postmaster, and his wife, she was having problems, and she was allowed, given disability, because they really fight you on disability, and she got disability, and they didn't give her any problems. Usually they harass the shit out of you. Kleiner was dead. Tom was dead. My mother, she was dead. My fiance, who couldn't take the pressure, like I said, left. Many of my properties have been sold off for me to survive. Many of my friendships were destroyed. Many of my families back east, members, they not understanding what I'd gone through, were alienated. I had nothing left except, like I said, the shadow of my health and my job. And their offer really made me very bitter. And as I said, it would be a lie if I didn't consider. So I asked my lawyer, I said, if I accept, will they let the other postal workers wear a respirator from here on out? And they said, no, only you. And you can never talk about the settlement. And I said, so what would happen? I mean, what about Larry, Anthony, and Tom? What about Tom's wife? What do they think of this? And he said, they're not involved with this, and they can't know about this. Only you are getting this offer. You are the last man standing. You were the person who stood up, and I was back, and I was the last man. And they were afraid. They knew I was a loose cannon. They were afraid I would keep going, which I would have. I am. So I was outraged. Nothing for Larry, nothing for Tom's wife, for the loss of his life. And he kind of sighed. He's a lawyer. He goes, no, just only you. So eventually I put pressure on him. I said, look, man, I want you to put pressure on the post office. They need to offer Larry and Anthony and Tom's widow some recompense. Quite frankly, here's the thing, a lawsuit, when you sue for let's say they offered let's say 10 million each. I try to express to people, they think, wow, that would be great. And that they think that the suffering you endure is worth 10 million. I try to explain to them the loss of one's health, the things that we lost, the suffering we went through. No amount of money would be recompense, really, would say, yeah, this was worth it. Anybody who thinks that, it just blows my mind. Because the thing is, we can build our own wealth. We have that's the thing what I'm trying to emphasize with this, us paying things forward. If we were the network and stand up with each other, we'd be like Navy SEALs. We would be unbeatable. We don't need to finagle one way through a lawsuit or a lottery tickets or scratch tickets or whatever, or Keno or whatever to get money. I really get creeped out with people who think that way. So anyways, they were the union got involved, and they were trying to structure everything, and they were saying, oh, what would you accept? What would you guys accept? Well, the thing is, it wasn't the money that kept me from not accepting. You know, they were going to offer X amount of money to me and to the others. They would have gone for that. But the one thing they still insisted is that none of us could talk about it. None of us could demand that other people should be allowed to work, to protect themselves. Nobody else would be allowed to wear a respirator. We wouldn't be able to talk about it. And I felt that was a great disservice to Tom. I thought, you're selling Tom's life pretty cheaply. You're selling our suffering pretty cheaply. So all the other people wanted me to, they're pressuring me to capitulate and keep my mouth shut and just take the money and forget about the other people who suffer ever. And I don't know how they could do that. I don't. In a way, I kind of do, but I just couldn't do it. Because I thought to myself, what kind of man does that make me? What kind of man does it make me to just capitulate to that? And it was an all or nothing proposition. They said, all of you have to agree to this or forget it. And I just couldn't do it. And so they're not all happy with me. Now perhaps they made a side agreement with on their own later. I don't know. I wonder about that. I'm going to be checking into that, because they basically get fearful when they see me. They avoid me, and when they see me, they said, "Oh, is there a way of checking this?" And I wonder if anybody, if in a situation, if. Anyways, the case was dead. After the case was dead, I kind of just felt the need to talk to the Assistant Attorney General, who was sitting across the litigation table from us, and I just wanted him to know what kind of man I am. And I was saying, hey, I need to talk to you. And he said, I can't talk to you if you got things still going. I said, no, I'm not redoing anything. It's dead, for now. And I said, look, it's nothing. There's nothing live. I just wanted you to know, man to man. It's important for me to look at you in the eye and want you to know, man to man, that I was not after some sort of lottery, some sort of windfall from the government. All I wanted to do, I said, I love that job and I wanted to stay there. And I was making money on the side at the time before my wealth got stripped off. I said, I was, even if I became rich, I just like working. And I have responsibilities, had all these responsibilities, and I just wanted to be left alone and just to work. It was nothing about money. I told these other guys that to sue. I said I didn't expect to win. I expected everybody to back off and let us do what we wanted to do. We just simply wanted to protect ourselves and work. And he knew that. He said, here's the thing. He said after the first session of depositions, when we were doing that, he goes, it became apparent to me, that your lawsuit was principle driven. Yeah. You were asking for money, but that's kind of required in a lawsuit. That kind of gets up there. Lawyers negotiate, and the money's there. But we knew that it was, it wasn't about the money. And he said when it became apparent when we were trying to make you deals, you specifically, that you were not going to keep quiet and so forth, we realized that you were a man of principle. And that's why our job is to protect and do the best that we can for our client, the United States Postal Office and Post Office, and that's why we had to destroy you. He said, "I'm sorry. That's that's just the way it works." So Bill, Douglas, to all my friends out there, I would say yes, I am a man of integrity. I'm not a perfect person. I've committed almost every sin at least once in my life, and that has been a stain on my moral fiber, something that can't be washed. But the only way to cleanse yourself of early sins of youth is to constantly not give up and say, I need to become a person of integrity. I got to make a distinct choice to not do this, otherwise what would that mean? Just because a person steals food in a supermarket when they're starving doesn't mean they go, oh shit, I just stole food, and no matter what I do from here on out, that's that. You can say, no, I did this was wrong. Yes, I was under stress, but this was wrong. I did this was wrong. I did that was wrong. We don't need to continue doing wrong. We could say, I can make tough decisions at huge cost to my health and everything else, that, for the benefit of standing up for my family and friends and for my character. So I would say I was a man of integrity. And I'm going to put the question to all of you out there. What would you have done? Do you think I've become a man of integrity? Because like I said, I've admitted that I've gone into supermarkets and stole foods. I stole on a couple occasions somebody's lunch. They're working hard and they're in a factory someplace, and I snuck in that building, went in the break room, and I stole their lunch. That's not integrity. But again, me moving forward later in life, trying to wash those sins, which can never really be washed because once committed, they've been done. But I'm willing to take any polygraph or I have documentation of everything I've talked about right now, everything. And so I have no fear of being charged with slander or libel. But the question I want to ask each of you, and I'd like you to write in, and I would like you to share these videos with your friends because I am trying to raise money for veterans, but this more importantly is all of us to look at these incidences like this and say, this needs to be talked about. What can we do? What should have Vince done? Is Vince an asshole, or is he, did he have integrity, or was he just stupid, or what? I like to think I was stand-up. What do you think? I think this interview is over, please, for now. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Douglas. Bill, you're a tough man, and I appreciate that in a way. But I'll tell you, this has been draining. So, anyways, all you guys have a great day. I got to get off and do some study and some math, and then maybe schedule a couple training sessions with people, training them. See you later.